You know how sometimes it's the smallest things, the parts you never really think about,
Hmm.
but they turn out to be absolutely crucial for, well, for driving these huge tech and industry trends.
Absolutely. And often, if you really want to get a feel for where global industry is headed, you've got to look at the markets for these sort of fundamental bits and
It
pieces.
can tell you a lot.
Yeah, they can show you things the big headlines might completely miss.
Which brings us neatly to our deep dive today. We're going to drill down into a market projections report looking at something very specific, graphite brushes.
Right.
Now, I know that might sound a bit mundane, but trust us, we're not talking about the kind you paint with.
No, definitely not. Graphite brushes, they're these vital components, mainly in electric motors and generators. Think of them as the contact point.
Okay.
They conduct the electric current between the parts that stay still and the parts that spin. And what makes them so useful are their specific properties.
Like what exactly?
Well, things like high thermal conductivity, basically. They handle heat really well, and they're naturally lubricating, which cuts down on wear and tear.
Ah,
So you find them everywhere, from, tiny power tools right up to huge industrial machines, and increasingly in vehicles, too.
right. So we have this report, and it really unpacks the global market for these brushes. It looks back at 2021 and projects growth all the way out to 2033. It's pretty detailed stuff.
Yeah, it is. And our mission here is really to take this dense report and, well, make sense of it for you.
Extract the key bits.
Exactly. Pull out the key findings, understand what's really driving the growth, and look closely at how it breaks down by region, because that's where you see these big global trends playing out differently.
So think of us as your guides.
Yeah.
We're wading through the data to pull out the most important insights so you can see the bigger picture just through the lens of this one critical component.
All right, let's dive in. Let's start with the big picture, the global numbers. The report puts the market size for graphite brushes at $748.3 million back in 2021.
Okay, 748 million. And looking just a bit ahead to 2025, it's expected to reach $920 million.
And then pushing further out, the projection for 2033 is around $1,390.6 million, so just under $1.4 billion.
Wow, okay, that's a pretty steady climb. Over that whole period, 2021 to 2033, the compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, is projected at a consistent 5.3%.
Hmm.
For a component like this, what does that steady growth really signal about the demand?
Well, it clearly shows that the core technologies relying on these brushes aren't just, holding their ground. They're actually expanding quite significantly.
Hmm.
And the report digs into the fundamental drivers behind this. A major one is the increasing push towards industrial automation everywhere.
Makes sense. More robots, more automated lines.
Means more electric motors, yeah. And therefore, more demand for the brushes inside many of them.
Okay, so automation is key. What else?
Well, tied into that is just the generally rising demand for electric motors across a huge range of applications. Not just heavy industry, but think HVAC systems, pumps, elevators.
Right, the less glamorous stuff that still needs motors.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the really big one everyone's talking about, the massive expansion of the electric vehicle sector.
Ah, EVs. How do graphite brushes fit in there? I thought many EV motors are brushless.
That's often true for the main powertrain motors, but EVs still use brushed motors in lots of other systems. Think pumps, fans, window regulators, sometimes even steering assists. Plus, the charging infrastructure itself uses components that rely on them, so the overall EV boom definitely contributes.
Okay, that clarifies it. It's not just the main drive motor.
Precisely. And don't forget consumer electronics. The report mentions this too. Think about all your handheld power drills, kitchen mixers, vacuum cleaners, lots of small electric motors there.
So these global trends are pretty clear, and the report specifically mentions that the unique qualities of graphite brushes, that heat handling, the lubrication we talked about, are why they're still the go-to choice for things like power tools, automotive alternators in conventional cars, and those really crucial industrial motors.
Yeah, their basic function links them directly to these major growth areas. It's why they're still so relevant.
Okay, let's get into the regions then, because you said that's where the story gets really interesting.
Absolutely. The global number is one thing, but the regional data shows where this growth is happening fastest and maybe why.
So looking at the map presented in the report, Asia-Pacific jumps out immediately. It's positioned as the leader, both in current size and future growth speed.
The numbers definitely back that up. Asia Pacific is projected to grow from $317.3 million in 2021
Okay.
to a huge $631.4 million by 2033.
Wow, nearly doubling. And that gives the highest regional CAGR overall.
Yep, 5.9%. That's noticeably higher than the global average of 5.3%.
Right. What does that signal straight away about, say, industrialization and electrification over there?
It just suggests incredible momentum. And within Asia Pacific, the data gets even more specific. China, well, no surprise there, it dominates in sheer volume.
Right.
Projected to grow from $137.1 million to $281 million. That's a solid 6.1% CAGR.
And the drivers are obvious, right? Massive manufacturing output, their huge push into EVs.
Unparalleled scale, exactly. But China isn't the whole story in Asia Pacific. The report highlights some other, maybe more surprising fast movers. India, for instance.
Oh, interesting. What about India?
India shows one of the fastest growth paths globally for this component. Its market is projected to more than double from $52.7 million to $111.1 million.
And CAGR.
A very strong 6.4%, even faster than China's rate in this specific.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
A very strong 6.4%, even faster than China's rate in this specific market.
6.4%.
Yeah.
What might that difference suggest? Maybe India's earlier in its industrial adoption curve for these specific technologies, or just building out faster right now?
It could be either or both. It certainly points to very rapid expansion in the sectors using these brushes. And then there's Southeast Asia, another real standout.
Yeah.
Southeast Asia collectively shows an impressive 6.8% CAGR, growing from about $27 million to $59.3 million.
6.8%. What's driving that?
The report connects it to shifts in regional supply chains, maybe some manufacturing moving there, and also the rise of smaller-scale manufacturing operations across those countries.
So it suggests a diversification or expansion of manufacturing activity.
Seems like it. Meanwhile, you look at Japan and South Korea, still significant markets, obviously, but their growth rates are more moderate. Around 5% for Japan, 4.9% for South Korea.
Kind of fits, right? More mature, established industrial economies compared to the explosive growth elsewhere in the region.
Exactly. It really paints a picture of different dynamics playing out across Asia Pacific.
Okay, let's shift gears. What about North America?
North America shows up as a very substantial market. Healthy growth, though maybe not quite as explosive as parts of Asia Pacific.
Right. The numbers show it going from $153.4 million in 2021 up to $286.5 million by 2033.
And the regional CAGR there is 5.3%, right on the global average.
Within the region, the U.S. has the biggest slice of the pie, growing from about $109 million to $193 million. But its growth rate, the CAGR, is a bit lower than the regional average.
Yeah, 4.9% for the U.S. The report mentions the strong industrial base, big investments in electrifying transport, and just widespread use in household appliances as key drivers. It's like a large, steady engine.
Okay, but then Canada looks a bit stronger within North America.
It does. Canada's got a 6% CAGR projected, going from roughly $27 million to $54 million.
And the report links that to specific sectors.
Yes, specifically expanding mining operations, rail transport, and growing automation industries in Canada. That gives you a good clue about where the demand is coming from there.
And then here's a really interesting one for North America, Mexico. Highest regional CAGR.
That's right, 6.6% for Mexico. It's projected to grow from just under $18 million to $39 million.
Wow, that's fueling that.
The report is pretty clear. Mexico is benefiting a lot from rising automotive manufacturing exports, plus more local production in general.
So it connects to those broader trends of nearshoring and manufacturing growth in Mexico. This niche data point really backs that up.
It provides some concrete evidence, yeah. You see the impact right down to the component level.
Okay, let's cross the Atlantic. Europe. What's the picture there? Moderate but stable growth.
That's a good description. Europe's market is projected to grow from $190.8 million in 2021 to about $336.5 million in 2033.
And the regional CAGR is 4.8%, so just a touch below the global average.
Right. And you see some of the major economies, like the UK and Germany, with their strong manufacturing and auto sectors, showing KGRs a bit below that average. Again, 4.1% for the UK, 4.4% for Germany.
Still growing, but maybe reflecting more mature markets again.
Probably. And the report indicates other large economies like France, Italy, and Russia have even lower growth rates predicted for this specific market. Around 3.5%, 3.7%, 3.2%, perhaps reflecting slower overall economic momentum or maybe just less rapid adoption of the specific technologies driving brush demand right now.
But just like the other regions, Europe isn't monolithic. There are pockets of higher growth. Spain looks solid.
Spain's at 5.4% CAGR, yeah. And then there's the rest of Europe category, which often includes Eastern European countries.
And that shows.
That shows the highest EGR within Europe, actually, 6.9%, projected to grow from $34.3 million to $77.7 million.
6.9%. That's significant. What's the explanation?
The report explicitly links it to new industrial investments flowing into those areas and an increase in electronics assembly operations. So again, it's another data point suggesting manufacturing activity might be shifting or expanding within the continent.
Fascinating how these component trends can hint at larger economic shifts. Okay, moving south now. South America.
South America is characterized as, well, a relatively smaller market overall for graphite brushes, and growing more slowly compared to the other major regions.
Brazil leads there, I assume.
It does, but with a more modest KG of 3.3%, going from about $25 million to just under $37 million by 2033.
And the other countries, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, are they similar?
Slightly higher shijis, but still relatively modest. The report lists them in the 3.6% to 5% range. The drivers are described generally as sort of gradual industrial expansion plus demand for things like power tools and transport components. It seems like a slower burn compared to the big automation and EV surges elsewhere.
Okay. Lastly, the Middle East and Africa. You said a mixed picture.
Yeah, it's varied. Egypt shows decent growth at 5.2%. Turkey is lower, around 3.2%.
But wasn't there another standout figure in this region?
Ah, yes. This is really interesting. The rest of the Middle East category, which is smaller in absolute terms, shows the highest CGR in the entire global report.
Get out.
Really.
How high?
A remarkable 7.5%. Now, it's climbing from a smaller base. True $1.6 million projected to grow to $3.5 million. But that rate of growth is the fastest anywhere in this data set.
7.5%. What on earth is driving that kind of surge?
The report links it directly to big investments happening in infrastructure, oil field machinery, which uses a lot of motors and general electrification projects. It specifically calls out countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia as examples pushing this forward.
Some massive development projects creating intense, focused demand.
That seems to be the story there. It shows how targeted investment can create these real hotspots of component demand.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. Zooming back out from all that regional detail. Asia-Pacific is clearly the giant, both in size and overall pace.
Definitely.
But then we see these specific pockets, these hotspots, with growth rates way above the regional average, sometimes even the global average. India, Southeast Asia, Mexico, parts of Eastern Europe, the Middle East.
Exactly. And what's the big takeaway from finding these high-growth pockets scattered around?
Well, it seems to reinforce that those big global drivers we talked about, automation, electrification, EVs, industrial growth, they're not happening uniformly, are they?
Not at all. They're clearly accelerating much faster in certain geographic areas. And this data on something as fundamental as graphite brushes gives us tangible proof of where significant investment and industrial activity are really concentrating right now.
Right. So bring it back to the listener. Why should understanding the market for something, frankly, as unflashy as graphite brushes matter to you?
Well, because this detailed report focused on this one seemingly simple component actually gives you a remarkably granular view of huge global shifts. The demand patterns for these brushes, they light up where electrification is really gaining traction, where manufacturing chains are evolving, where new infrastructure is going in. Basically, where economic development is speeding up on the ground.
It's a great example, isn't it? How looking closely at these niche markets using detailed data like this can give you clearer, more grounded insights into global tech trends, economic shifts, potential investment flows.
Much more so than just following headlines sometimes. It shows the foundational stuff happening in the real economy. Stuff that impacts everything from the power grid to the appliances in your kitchen to the car you might drive.
So this deep dive into graphite brushes, driven by these big forces of electrification and automation.
Yeah.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
These big forces of electrification and automation.
Yeah.
It really does feel like a small but pretty telling indicator of where global industry is actually heading.
I think so. It's a concrete signal.
Which leads to a final thought then. Thinking about those really varied growth rates we saw across the regions, especially those surges in places like India, Southeast Asia, Mexico, and parts of the Middle East with those really high Chi-G. What does this specific market data suggest to you, our listener, about where the future hubs of manufacturing, of EV adoption, and major industrial investment might actually be emerging globally? Something to think about.
Okay, let's dive in. Think about all the electric machines around us. Power tools, big turbines. What actually connects the power source to the moving parts? Often it's this small thing you probably never notice, the graphite brush.
Exactly. It's the crucial link, really, conducting electricity between the stationary bits and the spinning bits in motors, generators. Graphite's perfect for it. Handles the heat, the friction.
And today we're digging into this based on a source we looked at, Graphite Brush Market Dynamics and Evolution. Our plan is to sort of unpack the story here, how this, well, simple-looking component is caught in this interesting push and pull. There's huge demand drivers, but also some big challenges and some really cool innovation happening, too. It shows how basic things are key to complex stuff.
It really does. You find them everywhere. Automotive manufacturing, power plants, renewables like wind turbines, even railways. They're foundational across, well, huge parts of the global economy.
Okay, but here's what caught my eye from the source. If it's such an established, maybe old-school component, why is demand actually growing?
Yeah, it seems a bit counterintuitive, right? But it mostly boils down to the huge global shift towards electrification. More electric motors, more generators replacing older tech, think electric vehicles, industrial automation, better HVAC systems.
So just the sheer volume of new electric stuff needs these components.
That's a big part of it. They're reliable, they handle power surges well, and graphite itself is naturally lubricating, which helps.
You mentioned renewables too, like wind turbines. How do they fit in?
Right. Those big generators often use brushes for transmitting power or managing the magnetic field, the excitation system, they call it. It's a tough environment, needs durable parts.
And railways.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Railway electrification is massive globally. New lines, maintaining old ones. The traction motors and trains often need brushes for power collection or braking systems, so that's significant demand right there.
Okay, so electrification is pushing demand up. But the source also flags some, well, pretty serious challenges. Headwinds, you could say. What are they?
Well, the biggest inherent one is just wear and tear. Friction means they wear down. It's just physics. So they need checking. They need replacing. They aren't a fit and forget part.
Which means maintenance, downtime,
Yeah.
costs. Always a concern.
Precisely. And that leads straight into the second major challenge. Brushless technology. Brushless motors, well, they don't need brushes at all.
Ah.
Yeah. So you generally get higher efficiency, way less maintenance, longer motor life. It's a serious competitor.
Especially in areas where performance and low maintenance are key, like EVs or robotics.
Exactly. Those are prime markets for brushless tech. Premium electronics, too. It's a direct threat in many applications.
So they wear out and they might get replaced entirely. Anything else?
There are regulatory aspects, too. Dealing with the carbon dust from wear, disposing of old brushes. Environmental compliance adds complexity, adds cost. It influences decisions.
Right, so you've got this fascinating mix. Demand is up because of big trends like electrification, but you've got these built-in limits like wear, plus this advanced tech competing directly. Is the graphite brush industry just taking it?
No, not at all. This is where the evolution part comes in. They're innovating quite a bit. One big area is materials, developing advanced hybrid materials.
Hybrid? Like what?
Think mixing graphite with metals, like copper.
Yeah.
Try to get the best of both graphite's conductivity, copper's strength. This can lead to brushes that last longer, perform better, especially in tough spots like aerospace or high-speed trains.
Okay, so fighting back with better materials. What else?
Smart monitoring is another big one. Embedding sensors, using data analytics, maybe even AI, to track wear in real time.
Ah, so predictive maintenance. Knowing before it fails.
Exactly. Imagine preventing a factory line shutdown because the system flagged a brush needing replacement soon. That saves a lot of hassle and money.
Yeah, that's a big shift from just reactive fixes. Any other innovations?
There's also work on the graphite itself, making higher purity grades. Better materials mean more consistent performance, less electrical noise, smoother power transfer. Crucial for things like robotics where precision matters.
So it's not just the same old component. It's becoming smarter, tougher, more precise. It's evolving with the tech around it.
That's the picture, yeah. A traditional market adapting, innovating to stay relevant.
So for you listening, you see this really interesting tension. Huge growth drivers, electrification, pushing things forward. But then you have these real constraints where maintenance and this disruptive brushless tech pushing back. And in response, the brush itself is getting smarter, using advanced materials, real-time monitoring.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As both the brush technology and the brushless systems get better and better, how will factors like maintenance needs versus upfront efficiency decide which technology wins out where? It probably won't be one size fits all.
Yeah, exactly. What does this whole back and forth between an evolving old tech and a disruptive new one tell us about how machinery itself might evolve, how we balance efficiency, upkeep, innovation, even in these fundamental components? Definitely something to mull over.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the surprisingly dynamic world of the graphite brush.
My pleasure.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai